I'm not sick or struck dumb, or don't you know a kick when you see one can't quit? We're not done, we're gonna kick till the next one.
Hello one and all, and welcome to The Kick. This is a theme, scheme, and fever dream and movie podcast on the Now Playing Network. I am your host, Chance Solom Pfeiffer. And today, our Vampires of America kick reaches a hallucinatory midpoint. With 1973's Ganja and Hess, we're leaving behind not only the trope reliance of most vampire movies in this series, but also conventional Hollywood storytelling. I'll set it up this way. In 1972, an independent producer approaches actor and playwright Bill Gunn and is like, hey, Blackula just made like $4 million on a shoestring budget. Can you write and direct me another black vampire movie? And Bill Gunn is like, oh yeah, for sure, definitely. And then proceeds to make an avant-garde drama that uses vampirism to explore addiction, isolation, guilt, salvation, and the absurdity of truly dysfunctional relationships. It looks nothing like other vampire movies. It sounds nothing like other vampire movies. Ganja and Hess stars horror icon Duane Jones, the tragic hero of 1968's Night of the Living Dead, as a wealthy anthropologist, Dr. Hess. And one night he's stabbed by his new assistant, who's in the throes of a mental break, and the stabbing implement in question is this cursed ceremonial blade from an ancient African tribe of Murthia. Hess survives the stabbing but is now afflicted with bloodthirstiness and eternal life. The assistant, played by director Gunn, soon kills himself, but when the assistant's unsuspecting widow, Ganja, Marlene Carter, shows up at Hess's Westchester County estate looking for her husband, Ganja and Hess becomes Ganja ampersand Hess. Two tasteful, intelligent, beautiful, sometimes inscrutable vampires with real mixed feelings about this eternal curse that they're sharing. Here to discuss, she is a horror scholar and film critic whose work has appeared in many fine publications, including Fangoria magazine. Lea Anderson, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you about this movie. I gather that it's a real passion project of yours. Before we turn the mics on, you were talking about how you have programmed it for people before, but maybe we could just start with your journey with Ganja and Hess. How did you first see it, and what kind of opened up for you as you rewatched it more and more?
The first time was, well, I don't even know if it really counts. So I found out about Ganja and Hess back in like 2009. The dude that I was dating at the time got the recommendation for it off of 4chan, so naturally I didn't take it seriously at all. And it was from what I remember, he was really leading with like the lore of the film, of the two cuts, and that was kind of the thing that was attracting people to it. But I remember kind of like putting it on and thinking this shit doesn't make any sense, and just like passing out in like 15 minutes flat.
Sure.
And then years later, I saw it again. I the first time again all the way through. I think at MoMA, but I can't remember for certain, and was just blown away. It's like there's nothing else that I have ever watched that is like this film. And it really leaves me every time with the same kind of feelings that I get after watching a David Lynch film, of like coming out with like perfect clarity, but to articulate that is like you need a dissertation and, just years of your life.
Sure.
So I've devoted that.
Which is fantastic, because articulating it in the next 30 minutes, I wish us luck. But what do you think it was? Is it in part the difference between watching it on your couch when you're tired and watching it in a wonderful movie theater or museum theater? Because like, it's not passive viewing Ganja
No.
Hess.
Yeah, definitely not passive. You definitely have to be paying attention. But I also think that quality is what really rewards rewatching it.
Okay.
There's no way to like get everything in this film in the first go around. But yeah, I think being in a theater, I think my background is also in poetry, is not traditionally in film. So I think that that sort of foundation really lends itself to viewing these kinds of films that, like you said, are not working with trope here, right?
Yeah.
Like the point is kind of taking it apart. But it's just so visually captivating. Its visual language is so interesting. It's so beautiful to watch. It's so lush. And there's paradox is so much a part of it. And
Right.
yeah, that's really attractive to me.
The only perversions that can be comfortably condemned are the perversions of others. I will persist and survive without God's or society's sanction. I will not be tortured. I will not be punished. I will not be guilty. The blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, which was shed for thee, preserve thy body and soul for everlasting life. Drink this in remembrance that Christ's blood was shed for thee. And be thankful.
So I took my shot at it, but I wonder if you could try to fill in the blank here, Leah. So Ganja Hess takes the vampire movie and blank does what with it?
Turns it inside out.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the main ways in which you feel like things are inverted?
I think that it's doing well. For one, there's kind of like the point on its face, right? That these characters, no one involved is ever referred to as a vampire.
Right.
It's just like overt in the text. But when they refer to the consumption of blood, they refer to it as desire. And that's really the crux of what the vampire monster is, right? It's kind of like pure desire. Sometimes in like overtly sexy ways, and sometimes in really disgusting, really repulsive ways. And that's really like the core consideration of the film. That's really like what Bill Gunn was preoccupied with.
Yes. I have heard you say, I think, that Ganja Meta is your favorite movie character. Is that true?
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
She's I love watching her. A lot of it is Marlene Clark, the actress, who is to me just like fucking everything. Excuse my language. She is just it. She's everything. I think that like Duane Jones, her career was like very, very short, and sort of like most Black actresses of that time period, kind of tragic. And but her performances, what she brings to her characters in general, but this character in particular, is just everything that Ganja demands. And that's like the charm and also the terror. She's just like so beguiling as a character, and it's wonderful to watch.
There's something about, because the way that she shows up at the house is like, so where's my dead husband? who we don't have any, this is, if we need to say it again, this is like never has a movie been less interested in backstory than this one. But she's been living in Amsterdam. She shows up. She's regal as hell, but has no money for a hotel room. She just like contains all these multitudes, and very quickly she starts behaving as like, this is my house. And you said, I love that you said demands, because one of her best scenes in the movie is she has like the Jack Nicholson 5 Easy Pieces thing where she tells Archie, she's like, I want hominy grits, I need an extension cord, and I need grape jelly. Did you get all that? Hominy grits, extension cord, grape jelly. What's your read on the character? How does she contain so much?
Archie, when you get the grape jelly, and you are going to get the grape jelly, right?
Of course, madam.
Well, then why don't you get the grits at the same time?
Grits.
Grits. Hominy grits. You know what hominy grits are, don't you?
Hominy grits.
Hominy grits. Now, the other thing that I wanted to ask you about is I need an extension cord. I have a record player that I want to play downstairs.
For a record player.
For a record player. You understand a record player? And you understand extension cord. So we got 3 things going. We got some grape jelly, some hominy grits, and an extension cord. Don't we?
She's incredible. I lose it every time from the second her voice. It's just her hands and how we're introduced to her. But my gosh, I start cracking up immediately. She contains multitudes. She's just so complicated. Demanding and abrasive off the jump, but is so self-aware about it at the same time. That that scene, well, I mean, just the beginning, right? She it's not even so much that she's looking for her husband, it's that she's out of money.
Yeah.
And that's what she's calling Dr. Green, that's what she's calling Hess about. And she, demands he sends a driver and says that she's going to be waiting in front of Pan Am, and and the driver can't miss her because she's just that evil. And it's like, yes, just sends me every time. She encapsulates all of this horrible behavior, right? All of these characteristics that we would sort of be like really frowned upon or looked down on, but she's also sort of subverted because she's a Black woman, and she's taking on these kinds of qualities that we generally associate, you might call it Karen behavior, of being really demanding and really challenging and really exact and precise in what she wants. But at the same time, she's sort of critical about it. So what I love about that scene with Archie, that sort of the morning after the first night that she spends with Dr. Green, with Hess, she's having this back and forth with Archie where she demands, the grape jelly and the harmony grits and the extension cord, but she's also asking about him. And he says something like she asks how long he's been working here, and he says that he came with the house, and she starts to poke at him like, oh, so they installed you after the plumber. And it's this she's fucking with him about this idea of a person being inherited as an object with a house, and all of the history and all of the implication that's loaded in that. And I love the tensions of both those qualities, or that awareness.
Yeah, super dimensional. She also has the speech where people love to just come to Dr. Green's house and open up to him and deliver a big monologue while he just kind of sits there, maybe listening. We don't know. They didn't have enough camera setups to show him listening. But she's talking about her mom. And she's like, whatever this thing was I had, I wanted to give her a full case of it. And her voice just drops and drops in this kind of I don't know, grande dame of Hollywood sort of way, like a Joan Crawford or something like that. It's
completely
amazing.
It was as though I was a disease. I have a brother that's 10 years older than I am. I have a sister that's 8 years older than I am. So that I was obviously an accident. And it was ganja. I came down with ganja, And I think that day I decided that I was a disease. and I was going to give her a full case of it. That whatever it was I was, she was going to have it.
I think of Ganja as like a badder Holly Golightly, but that that scene, that's the, per what you just said, the multidimensionality of the character, because it's everything you need to know about Ganja, and it's something that's like so relatable as from like an identity position as a Black woman, as Black girls, getting the messaging that there's something wrong with you and that you're almost like pathogenic. Everyone sort of has these stories of like people not wanting to touch you or being treated like you're a disease, and that's the language that she uses. And it's about that sort of backstory that she gives is about how even as a child she was being projected on, like people were projecting onto her this kind of hypersexuality that she was just playing, and then they started accusing her of all of these things. And so that's where her defiance comes from this like, if that's what you're going to say, I'm going to give you a full case of it. And it's just so resonant and also defiant, because the sort of what you're supposed to do is play small, right? And then she just absolutely refuses to do that.
Lea, I think you've written about this movie from multiple angles, but the one that I found and read and greatly enjoyed before calling you up here was talking about this movie in the ways where horror and romance intersect, and how there is, there's no love without horror, there's no love without a certain monstrousness. It was sort of your read on this movie and the others that you included in that little set of essays. But how would you characterize the central relationship here? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh, it's complicated. It's messy.
Yeah. Right.
It's messy. It's thorny. Yeah, in those essays, I talk about romance and horror being co-creating tensions. And that's really, really demonstrated in this film, right? Because there's like aspects of this relationship that are obviously not, like you're not trying to emulate it, right? Like this is not a PSA kind of a film. But there's also this, it gets at something deeper about actually how we do experience each other. And that tends to come through mess, but there's also beauty and transcendence in that. And I think of Ganja and Hess as encapsulating, each character encapsulates kind of oppositional tensions, but there's this sort of beautiful moment of transcendence that occurs between them. And even though it's fleeting, that's also the nature of it, right? Like by definition, that kind of romance can't stay.
Right.
And yeah, so there's something truer to like experience in the way that they relate to each other and kind of what's being demonstrated on screen.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing I most wanted to ask you about, and because this kind of gets into the thing I was most beguiled by, is so when they very quickly, spoilers for the 52-year-old film Ganja and Hess, guys. Go and it's hard to really spoil a movie like this. So like,
this is an experience. This isn't about plot points.
That's true. I can't spoil a Fish concert for you. But so very quickly they get married, and Dr. Green with his eternal life is like, I want you to live forever. Stab. Now you've got the curse too. And then in the very next scene, as she's sort of like getting used to her quote unquote vampire body, and she's like it's freezing to be a vampire. Have you ever noticed that? And he's like, yeah, for sure. That's why I'm always hanging out by the fire. And
I've
she's
just
like,
gotten used to it.
yeah. Oh, and that line's kind of brutal. She's like, what do you do? And he says, you grow used to it. It's like, oh my God. And in the same, she's like, what are you reading? He's like, I'm basically reading a book about how to kill myself and not be a vampire anymore. So like the 180 so hard toward, I need you to be with me forever and I'm out of here. What do you make of that in terms of like this kind of, as you put it, like transcendent but super quick burning relationship? Or like what is that trying to tell us about someone who's like, I need you to be just like me so I can quit being me, or something like that? I don't know.
A couple things. I think Ganja chose this, which is, I think, one of the things that's interesting or distinguishes them in terms of their experience. He like tells her, she knows what he is. She finds her now ex-husband's dead body and then chooses to marry him.
You're right.
So consent makes all the difference, right? But per Hess's character in that 180, I think it's like a Frankenstein thing. It's like a Dr. Frankenstein thing of like devotes himself to bringing this creature into creation and then does it and then is like, oh no, abomination, and now I have to destroy you. That's kind of what, like, he doesn't seek out to destroy her, but he does seek to destroy himself. But I think a lot of the tensions of the way that the film's preoccupations are interacting with the church are really written through Hess. And so I think that's like the completion of that aspect of the story.
Yeah. Do you read like any of the addiction allegory into the movie at all, or is that just kind of not your chosen path?
Yeah, I do, but I read it. Anything can be read in any multitude of ways, right?
Sure.
I like to read the addiction aspect, the like vampirism as a metaphor for addiction in this film in like the most expansive way possible, which is really like, what is an addiction? An addiction is a compulsive behavior that's unregulated. And you can experience that with literally anything. In the opening sequences when we're in the church, and the Reverend is played by Sam Wayman, who does the score and does the music. He talks a lot. He keeps returning to the statement of being high on the Lord and high on God. And so I think that's if we're like thinking about the addiction thing as kind of like a triangle, there's like alcohol or drugs, there's love and sex, and then there's religion and God. And this is a very like theological film at its crux. And so, yeah, I think that's a factor in there as well.
Makes sense. I guess a real newbie reading for me was just like, I feel like that can happen sometimes in relationships where people have a dependency, or like, totally. I need you to come be with me here in my dependency because it's way more fun when there's two of us, and now you're in a terrible way, so I'll just kind of see myself out.
100%. Yeah, that's totally in there, right? Like this is it's overt in the text. I think that there is this kind of paradoxical how we sort of create each other, sometimes both in loving and in harming one another. You have to, in order to love someone else, you have to give up something of yourself, right? Indeed. And that's a kind of violence, but it can be consensual, right? But sometimes we do it and we're like, wait a second, actually that limb was really important and I need that back and this isn't going to work out. So I gotta go find myself. Sometimes it plays out that way. And sometimes it's like creating space to sort of expand beyond yourself, where it's like, all right, so maybe I dropped one limb and grew two other ones. Love is really complicated, right? And there's a lot of kind of like metaphysical violence involved in it. And yeah, there's but we're always sort of creating each other out of that at the same time. And I don't know, it's like beautiful and horrific and disgusting and kind of like the source of the sublime, right?
You brought up the church, Lea, and I was thinking about how it's almost like taken for granted in most vampire movies that like opposite of Christianity is vampire, and holy water and crosses, and not even really like engaging with theology, just like throwing symbols of a thing at vampires. But I think this movie like clearly complicates that, specifically
Definitely.
with like the relationship of the Black church to whatever this curse is, and like the real like omnipresent invocation of like drinking Christ's blood. And I'm not sure I have the words on watch one. So like what's your read on like what Hess is looking for as he's like constantly talking about like guilt and how he doesn't have to feel guilty, but he does wander into this church at the end and offer himself up very intentionally. What's your read?
It's so, this is a dissertation question. Yes, so so the central, all right, so I'm coming at this, I feel like I have to preface that I was not raised in Christianity. And so it's a very kind of like outside perspective, but the communion being one of the like holy rituals within the Christian pantheon is about communion through the consumption of flesh and blood,
Right.
symbolized in the wine and the cracker, right? So for like fans of midnight mass, this has always kind of lingered. This is what Christianity severed from Judaism on, is this conflict, because the consumption of blood is considered blasphemous within both Judaism and Islam. So in some ways, even though vampires have sort of been rendered as like this oppositional monster in Christianity, they were sort of created around each other. And this kind of like these accusations of vampirism and cannibalism and blasphemy go all the way back to the beginning. And so, yeah, I think Bill Gunn is really sort of struggling with the ontological implications of that with regard to like the nature of human existence, because everything alive is compelled by hunger.
Yeah.
Including vampires.
Yeah. And then you also have the thing too that like the Black churches that exists in America is always a pro-liberation distinction of Black people, which is not, of course, the case in the European tradition of Christianity.
It's complicated. Anytime you're dealing with the Black church, it's a complicated thing because Christianity was so much of like the weapon of white supremacy and enslavement. But it's the thing, oh my gosh, when you go back into history and study, the culture of the enslaved, it's always what gets revealed again and again is how incredibly brilliant and resourceful and creative people are. And so there's a syncretic nature. There's a syncretic aspect of the Black church that no matter how conservative it is, it also never gets away from. And the practices, gospel and like the practice of the music and its connection to the field songs is just so profound And but it's also like everything else, and this is kind of the tension that, again, I think Gunn is playing with, can sort of become all-consuming for people. And so, yeah, I think he's sort of wondering about that energy exchange that happens between vampires and between like a performer and an audience.
Mm-hmm. We've probably gone too long without talking about how this movie looks and sounds. So my first blush, Lea, was thinking at times like, oh, this movie is shot in some ways like Grey Gardens or like a verite document, like the scene we were talking about earlier where they're hanging out at the breakfast table. It like pauses halfway through and just like cuts to some roses. Speaking of thorny, your adjective, and then just cuts back. And I'm like, you don't do that in a narrative movie. You only do that in like a Maisels Brothers documentary. But then I figuring out that James E. Hinton, the cinematographer, is a much vaunted civil rights photographer. But then also you have these moments of like clear, like just out of the box bonkers expressionism. So I felt like it was combining like two like kind of wildly different visual styles.
It's so beautiful and dreamy and glowy, and that lushness, it's just as if it's just dripping with eroticism, right? Like it feels humid as a film. Like when you're watching it, you can feel it. And yeah, the imagery and the sound is so incredibly evocative. I think one of the really cool things about this film too is that like these folks were just friends. They were just like hanging out, fucking around, and pulled this fucking genius rabbit out of a hat. And yeah, and the shots really are just like someone came over to Hess's house and they're having a conversation, but this is also how people socialized before these things, before our like Black Lodge devices came.
For the listening audience, she's holding up her phone.
Yes. Yeah, people just kind of like showed up and talked. And
you got any wine?
So
you got any blood?
Yeah. But the I don't know, one of my favorite scenes, because the composition of the shots is also so incredibly intentional. One of my favorite ones that doesn't get spoken about as often, after George Maida stabs Hess with the Murthian knife, when he's like preparing himself to commit suicide, he like kneels in the bathroom and he's across from a mirror that has like a bouquet of flowers in front of it, and the composition of the shot is looking at him where like he's pointing the gun at himself, but behind his head is the bouquet. So it's like there's this where you would expect the gore, there's only flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something so much about this film in that, in the tension of those.
Yeah, I love the shot of Ganja at dinner too, where her face is framed inside the candelabra is a pretty amazing degree of difficulty one. Do you have any other faves beautiful. You'd shout out?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. So many. The I mean the sex scenes are excellent. The second one, and I don't know if it was actually the second one, the long one that builds up to Ganja's scream, the superimposition of her face, and then the the back covered in blood and like sparkling is just it's just so stunningly beautiful, like really truly breathtaking.
I feel like an editor could tell me like why it works and why it doesn't feel insane, but there is something about the verite and the expressionism combined where you're like, you go so long in the movie being like, this is happening. No one is moving the camera. These are just people at a house. As you said, like, it's by the river, it's summer, it feels very earthy. And then you get that shot of the poor rec center guy.
Oh my God.
Who
Well, but
then
he gets to come back.
Maybe he's actually doing great. But yeah, it looks as though he is sweating blood out of every pore in his body. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I don't know how these things do work together, but like the one really enhances the reality enhances the dream and the other way around.
Yeah. It's like, there's a whole thing in Hollywood, there's a whole thing in filmmaking about lighting with Black folks. And it's just, all the people in this film look so gorgeous. And yeah, it's delightful. And then Sam Wayman, the score is, it's just everything. Sometimes I just listen to it. Not even just watching it, just listening to it. It's truly delightful, experiential.
Yeah. And it sounds like ahead of its time in terms of like remixing songs and putting a song underneath another song in a movie, in a way that is very, you said delightful. I was going to say kind of appropriately jarring.
I like to be jarred, so that's definitely informing the way that I approach things. Yeah, but this is like during the time, this is the beginning of hip hop's inception, right? Like these methodologies are being invented at that time period. So yeah, it's so demonstrative of that kind of invention and that kind of creativity that was happening during that time period. Yeah. Really interesting.
And Sam Wayman, we should say, is Nina Simone's brother.
Yes. So in the family.
Musical innovation in the family. Lea, I would love to have you, if you don't mind, do the vampire questionnaire that I'm posing to everyone in this series. Now, also, this is a much different sort of movie than Fright Night or From Dusk Till Dawn. The vampires are not like and just purely antagonistic. So feel free to be like that. This question doesn't make any sense with Ganja Hess, but let's still go for it. What is the most upsetting thing about these particular vampires?
Existence for them.
Yeah.
Well, for Hess, I think it ends. I think existence up to being a vampire for Ganja, and existence after being a vampire for Hess.
There you go. Are the vampires metaphors or just killers?
Definitely metaphors.
Definitely. Although there is an interesting, I was trying to track, like, Hess is getting worse and worse in terms of like who he's getting blood from throughout
totally.
the movie.
Yeah, he's definitely getting more and more desperate.
There's a slide there.
Yeah.
In terms of classic vampire lore references, too many, too few, right amount?
Right amount. And not really, there's the gesture about the Myrthian civilization beforehand, and that returns throughout the film, is really important to it. But also, this is like entirely speculative, not a Dracula situation at all.
It's true. I think the movie only posits one way, but I'll still ask. The best way to kill a vampire, according to this movie?
Under the shadow of a cross.
Yeah, the shadow of a cross even is interesting in terms of like we're gonna go once removed. We're gonna curveball away from lore. It's the shadow of a cross.
The shadow. It's about the shadow. Yeah.
Man. And on a scale of Orlok to Cullen, how hot are these vampires?
Oh, so far beyond. they're, oh my gosh, the Cullens. The Cullens are like the opposite of these vampires.
I know. I'm sorry that's. I apologize for that being the scale. The silly thing is, on every episode so far, because we had Salma Hayek in Dusk Till Dawn, we had Chris Sarandon in Fright Night, we had William Marshall and Blackula now here. Every single person's been like, well, obviously super hot and also much hotter than the people you're talking about. What are you doing? But I haven't changed the scale so far.
It's good. Look, everyone loves to step on a Cullen.
Exactly. Every guest has been like, well, that wouldn't be mine. But anyway, I know what you're saying, and they're very hot. Have you, just as a thought experiment, ever thought about what Ganja's life is like? What she was doing in Amsterdam? How do you think she's spending her time?
I think about Ganja's relationship with George a lot. Even though we don't see them interact on screen, there's some juxtapositions happening. We get to see both of them eat with Hess and treat Archie in completely oppositional ways. So you can only imagine what like the two of them being at dinner must have been like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. What could she have been doing in Amsterdam? Laying waste, I hope.
Just hanging out in the red light district. Is there a better showcase for 70s movie blood than this movie?
Absolutely not.
Because we all know 70s movie blood when we see it, right? And
I love it.
It keeps being poured in. This is the only vampire movie that's made me be like, I really want a Bloody Mary right now.
It's like strawberry syrup. It's like the color of strawberry syrup. I love it. I love practical effects and the non-reality of them. Also, it glimmers. I want whatever I'm drinking to sparkle.
There's a great scene of the overhead shot of him pouring it in an entirely like white medical sink, and you're just like, I get it. Looks really good.
Really appetizing. Blood does not look like that in real life.
Not
even close.
So do you think that the rec center guest is about to have a nice life? Or what's your read on the very ending of Ganja and rec center?
I like to think that they live happily ever after. Oh my gosh. It does. So it ends on this note of direct address with Ganja, which you see this in lots of films that star Black women, where the last scene sort of ends on them breaking the fourth wall and just staring directly at the spectator. And I read it as like Ganja's sort of achieved this liberation that she couldn't find in her human form. And I don't know, maybe that's where like it picks up on Only Lovers Left Alive. It's kind of like from there.
That was the movie I thought about in terms of like what's been influenced by this. The Spike Lee remake, notwithstanding obvious influence there, but Only Lovers Left Alive. I was thinking about the A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which looks nothing like this movie, but also has that thing of like the vampire having to make decisions about like what is just in like a really ambiguous way. Are there any other movies that you see like springing forth from Ganja and Hess in this genre?
Man, I think that Nikki Arujusu's Suicide by Sunlight.
I don't know that one.
It's a short film, but I believe she's working on a feature for it or a series. I can't quite remember. But not so much I think that it takes a lot from Blade in its aesthetics, but in her main character, in her characterization, I think the tensions of kind of this like incredibly charming, incredibly alluring, also completely predatory
Lea, what's your interest level in the forthcoming Sinners?
Totally down. Excited to see it.
Let's go.
I'll be there opening night.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm really. It's the capstone to this series, so
Mhm.
I'm really hoping that it, makes the whole thing worth it.
Yeah,
in a way.
sure.
Not
I mean, either way, because it's about the journey, right? We got to
Right.
chat about all these awesome vampire films. So,
Yep.
oh,
I just
yeah.
learned today that Delroy Lindo is in it, and that's always welcome.
Yeah.
So yeah. Lea, I really appreciate the time and the insight and help me understand a little bit more about this movie that I clearly need to watch 5 more times. Quite possibly not at home, I think, to like really get there.
If you get to see this in a theater, absolutely go. It's always a different experience in a theater, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it was great talking to you. Thanks.
Thank you. This was an awesome conversation. Thank you for your very thoughtful questions.